Right, so the SA Veterinary Association is very concerned about how many vets are leaving our country. Now, there's an international standard, which I understand is between 200 and 400 vets per million people, or should that be million pets? I'm not too sure. This is why we have Gert Steyn, director of the South African Veterinary Association, who's very kindly joining us this morning. Gert, good to have you on eNCA. I appreciate your time. So just how bad is this? Just set the scene for me.
Good morning, Gareth. Thank you very much. Well, it's bad at present, but it's about to get worse. The challenge is that we've launched a survey last year to assess the state of affairs amongst veterinarians, and we had a fantastic response rate. We would say in excess of 20% of practicing veterinarians in South Africa responded to the survey. And the daunting thing is that young veterinarians, more than 50%, 58% of them to be exact, that are younger than 29 years of age, have either begun the process of immigration or is very certain they're going to immigrate very soon. So that puts us into a very difficult position going forward. I think what your viewers might not appreciate is that the role of the veterinarian in food safety and security is very substantial, much bigger than just treating domesticated animals and racehorses.
Do we have a sense as to why we could be losing or are losing so many vets? Is it because of a brain drain? They could make more money in other countries as veterinary surgeons and as vets, or is it a case of the blackouts and security and all the usual reasons around immigration, or is it specific that vets want to explore their opportunities elsewhere?
Unfortunately, Gareth, the answer is very much what you've just indicated. We asked the same question of the respondents, and the indication was that first and foremost, safety and security, and a very close second is for economic reasons. You need to appreciate that the 6 years at varsity to become a veterinary surgeon is very expensive. And more often than not, to be able to earn sufficient money, to be able to cover the study fees, which are most likely taken out in a loan, is not sufficient to carry that. So it is a need there is a need to go practice overseas purely for economic reasons.
So where do we now start to try and, I don't want to say stop anybody, you can't stop anybody immigrating, Gert, of course, but where do we start incentive programs? Where do we start making it worthwhile for vets either coming through university, they're about to start their careers, or those who are considering leaving, especially the youngsters? What in your mind could work to keep them here? We can't change load shedding, we can't change crime. Is there another way of doing this?
Yes, I think there's a couple of ways, but there's a short answer and a long answer, or a short solution and a long solution. The long solution would be to increase the veterinary training capacity in South Africa. That would take up to between 8 and 10 years, but we've received indications from both academics and private veterinarians that there's a concern that we won't be able to staff any new veterinary faculty. Secondly, what we need to look at, South Africa is a fantastic destination and has always been a fantastic destination in the eyes of the world. We need to look at our regulations for veterinarians that's coming to practice in South Africa. Veterinarians have inexplicably been removed from the critical skills list, which means that any veterinarian that is practicing overseas or qualified overseas can't get a work visa to come here unless there's very significant reasons for them to come to do so. In the past, 18 months ago, when we were on the critical skills list, it was fairly easy. Secondly, another problem is there are only a number of universities, 9 universities in the UK and a few universities in Australia, that allows veterinarians to practice in South Africa without writing any additional examinations. But even then, they are forced to perform a compulsory community services year in South Africa, posts which are not always available. So it becomes very difficult for any overseas veterinarian to come work in South Africa. If we were to be able to change those regulations, and that should not take a long period of time. You know, there's no particular reason why we can't appreciate that we have a significant risk of food safety and security, and we need to look at attracting as many as possible veterinarians and skills into South Africa to avert a potential disaster.
Gert, you've raised such a good point as well, because I think many people, when we went into this discussion, you've now raised it for the second time, is it's not about treating your cat or your dog or your hamster. There's a food security issue here as well. Very briefly, you've raised a number of, not just concerns, but a number of ideas to move this forward and try and prevent this. Who do you need to talk to? Who do you need to get into contact with to try and make this happen, as I say goodbye to you?
It's a combinatory protocol between the Department of Agriculture, or Land Affairs and Rural Development, and the Department of Home Affairs. Because the Department of Home Affairs is the custodian of the critical skills list. First and foremost, veterinarians need to come back into the critical skills list to try and attract further veterinarians. Secondly, with DALRAD, we need to look at the way that incoming veterinarians into the country be exempted from performing CCS, compulsory community services here. And I think that is the most critical point. And it's not for lack of trying. We've been trying to engage with government over the last 18, 24 months, but unfortunately non-responsive.
Yeah.
It becomes critical for us. And I think maybe just to end, Gareth, to say that tonight, if you are fortunate enough to have an animal protein as dinner, appreciate that at least 3 to 4 veterinarians have been involved to ensure that that plate of food, that animal protein, is safe.
I've never thought of my chicken burger like that. I'm going to from now on. But on a serious note, Gert, thank you very much. We're going to follow up with those 2 departments as well. That's why I was hoping you'd give me the department names, because my producers and the team, I'm sure, will try and at least get the departments on to react to what you've said and hopefully get a conversation going. That's why I did that. And I thank you for your time. It's very worrying. And I like the way Gert painted that. It's not about your domestic dogs and cats. Yes, it is, of course. But there's a much bigger issue at play when we start seeing vets, young vets, with all that wealth of knowledge, rather going overseas.